Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us for today's Aspiring Speakers Lunchtime Lightning Talks. That's quite a mouthful, isn't it? For those of you who don't know me, let me introduce myself. My name is Abbi. I work with the Aspiring Speakers and a number of other communities, all of which are free and run by RecWorks. So who are RecWorks? Well, we are a tech recruitment company with a massive difference. Obviously, as a company, we're always on the lookout for more clients, and some of our best clients have come from community members who recommended RecWorks to their internal talent team. So if you are hiring for a new team or you're working for a company that is, we would love to have a chat with you. And if you want to know more about what we can offer, just ping me a message on Twitter, LinkedIn or Slack. My name is as you see it on the screen, and we really look forward to taking that conversation further with you. So what's the difference, I hear you ask? Well, also as a company, we really believe that recruitment can be a force for good in the industry beyond just placing people in jobs. We have a particular focus on learning, mentoring, and personal development. If people want to learn and others want to share their knowledge, we are more than happy to connect you through our communities and events. We see this as giving back to those we've worked with in the past, but also paying it forward to those we hope to work with in the future. As I've said, we love to give opportunities for people to connect, and this event is part of that. If you'd like to know more about any of our other communities, again, please get in touch with myself or Helen Lewis if you know her, and we can take it from there. We have 3 lightning talks for you today. I'm pushing the boat out a bit because I'm doing one. And this is my first one, so please be kind. But I am happy to take feedback, because I know that's a great way to learn how to improve. So you've got me and you've got Carly and Karsten are going to speak today, and there will be time for questions as well if you want. And once I've finished speaking, I will put the link for the video in the chat so that you all know where to get the video if you want to. And if you're watching online, I hope you really enjoy the talks and find them interesting for yourself as well. So with no further ado, we're going to kick off with me. Aren't you lucky, folks? So let me just share my screen. I want to share that one. There we go. I can't see any of you now, so if you can tell me that you can see my screen and that it's got my front page on, that would be great.
Yeah, it's all good.
Fab. Lovely. So, hi, everybody. As you can see from my slides, my talk is called ABC Easy As, and it's all focused around 3 things I've learned while remote working. So as I've already said in my intro, my name is Abbi Leverton. I'm a community advocate and events host for RecWorks. And as you can see on the bottom of this slide as well, you can find out how to get me. It's very easy. Look for my name on Twitter, Slack or LinkedIn, and you will find me. I don't currently have pink hair, but that's okay. So this is a bit interactive, which is a bit of a shame. Oh no, I can see you guys there. Yes, lovely. So by a show of hands for me, who was working in an office-based environment pre-COVID? Yeah, me too. Okay. And so has anybody gone fully back to the office post-COVID? No. Okay. So that's quite a resounding no. So the reason I've asked that is because obviously pre-COVID, quite a lot of us were office-based and we didn't really consider remote working to be an option. But when COVID hit, a lot of people suddenly had to remote work when they'd never done it before, because companies realised that on the whole, things could be done from home, and for the safety of their staff, they needed to stay at home as well. So this has been widely recognised as being great for most, because obviously better flexibility, reduced travel. I mean, you save money that way too, but there are some downsides. So what I'd like to do today is share 3 things that I have learned from remote working and hope that something in here resonates with you. So point 1, the first thing I've learned from remote working is that change is inevitable. Growth is optional. I've called this talk ABC, so my first point is adapt. Obviously, in the tech world, things can change as quickly as any of us can say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. like that. So obviously there are lots of statistics out there, but the one I've picked is that the artificial intelligence industry, for example, is growing by 16.4% year on year. That's according to Zapier.com. That's, I mean, we're growing in lots of different ways, aren't we, across the tech industry, and it's quite surprising how fast things are moving. So another show of hands, has anybody ever attended any kind of workshop to help you with public speaking? Yeah, so a few of us. The reason I mentioned this particular aspect is because some of you may know through our Aspiring Women Speakers community, we run Couch to Conference, which is an initiative intended to equip women to go from not having done any public speaking to being able to talk at a conference. We've proven it's successful and we're really excited about that. So we have our second cohort running at the moment. Now, in our first cohort, we had 8 people in that group. This time we've got 21. The decision to go from smaller numbers to bigger numbers literally happened overnight. So it can throw you when things like that happen, can't it? But obviously, by being adaptable, we know that sometimes there's some dropout because other things come up, work projects take over, and things like that happen. So we knew there was going to be a bit of dropout, and so we would end up with slightly fewer people, but we still wanted to have a big impact. So having 21 people in the cohort to start with is brilliant. And the benefit of the remote working side is that they're all across the country, but we can still get together to do the workshops. So if I'd chosen not to be adaptable, the current cohort would not be such a large group of amazing ladies that we're going to be able to help get to conferences and speak at conferences. By choosing to grow in this way, I am part of a team that's helping to benefit women in the tech industry. And who doesn't want to benefit people in the tech industry? The second part of my point I'd like to tell you about is about having my toddler. So those of us who are parents know that having a baby completely flips your world upside down. And people can tell you that. And then when it happens, you go, oh my goodness, it really does turn your world upside down. In my experience, the quicker you learn to adapt and relax and take each change as it comes, the better life is for you and the rest of your family. My little boy is an explorer. He is into everything, and I really mean everything. He wants to know what every object in the house does. He wants to do things for himself. So cooking has become quite an interesting exploit now because he wants to cut things up for me instead of with me. This has a few effects. Number one, it takes a lot longer to make dinner. So I have to choose the right timing for him to help me. Number two, he's normally handling a kitchen knife, which has some interesting side effects. We're teaching him, point down and don't wave it in my face, thank you. And thirdly, something will inevitably get knocked over or spilt or fall on the floor, at which point we have to tidy up before we can do the next bit of cooking. So being adaptable, actually, it takes a lot longer for us to cook dinner, but I'm raising an independent little boy who's going to be a young man who can look after himself and cook his dinners. So he's learning something so valuable for his life by me adapting and having to continue to adapt for him to learn that. Point number 2, I've called brain dump. So we have adapt, brain dump. You can see where I'm going. The pen is mightier than the sword. If anyone doesn't know Dwight Schrute from The Office, I apologise, but he's quite pernickety, let's put it that way. And he says false, pens are composed of blunt plastic, while a sword is composed of solid steel. So the reason I mention pens, it's about the pens really. For me, if I really want to remember something that's happening, I have to write it down. Does anybody else use pen and paper to help you remember things, as opposed to having it on a technological device? Yeah, I'm getting a few nods. Thank you. So I do have a calendar on my laptop. It's synced with my phone. So I always know what's happening. If I check my phone or my laptop, I always know what's going on. But the calendar on the kitchen wall is the one that takes precedence because it's paper. And I have it color coded with all my different pens. So I know what each thing stands for. I also use a normal notebook and pen for my work projects. So every week I write out the days and the times of different events that are happening and the tasks I need to complete with their deadlines. For me, I find that really helpful to brain dump so that I've not got everything buzzing around in my head, but also it really helps me to actually remember things as well. Now, I know Fahad and some others in the aspiring speakers community have mentioned to me as well before about journaling being a helpful tool when you need to brain dump. So again, if you need to get things out your head, putting them on paper rather than some on your laptop, for example, can just really help have that bit more permanence and keep them out your head. And also, if it's something you need to remember, you're more likely to remember it. There is an article by Train the Brain where they speak about the benefits of handwritten versus digital notes that are taken by students when listening to a lecture. So although there are benefits to both, they make the point that handwritten notes force students to think about what they're writing down, which makes them think more deeply about what the message means and how to boil it down into simpler terms. And they say that this is a higher level of processing and thinking skill than copying something word for word. I'll put the link to the article in the chat. You can have a read for yourself if you don't believe me. Point 3 is about connection. And again, I've got another quote for you. Nobody really wants to be alone. People need people. So what do I mean when I'm talking about connection? Well, when you work remotely, you can become isolated without actually realizing it. And then when you do realize it, it's difficult to know what to do to help feel more connected again. So building your network through communities and conferences means you will always know someone who will be able to who will have your back. Without connection, you can feel very alone. And I have another statistic for you. According to an article in March of this year, although remote working has generally been proven to improve people's work-life balance and happiness, research consistently shows us that isolation is one of the biggest drawbacks to remote working. And this is based on a survey by Glassdoor. I'm not just making it up. Over a third of people in this survey working full-time and remote said the setup made them feel lonely. And the article goes on to say that this can have a negative impact on your productivity, your engagement, your progression in your career, and none of us wants that. So how do we combat it? Well, I think a vital way to ensure you're not alone is obviously to get connected. And there are many ways to do this. I've got another show of hands time for you. How many of you are part of a local in-person meetup? Yeah, quite a few of you. Okay, and an online community? Yep, obviously, because you're here. So thank you. Thanks for joining us. Do you ever get together with members of your team for a virtual coffee break? No. Okay, so there's something that maybe could work for connecting and engaging your team a bit more. It all depends on what works for different people. There are so many things you can do. So these are all some ways that we can connect when working remotely. And like I've said, within communities like the Aspiring Speakers, Aspiring Women Speakers, LJC, LinkedIn communities, there are so many different ways to get connected, and it doesn't take a lot of effort to get yourself involved. It's a quick little sign up and you're in a group of people who will have your back. The other options are that outside of work, you can obviously get out in nature with your friends and family, join a gym or a swimming club or a boxing club, find an interest group that you can be part of. If you can get to conferences and meet your online connections in person, of course, that's always a bonus because that builds your relationship and it makes any future messages between you online more meaningful because you know the person that's messaging you even better than you did before. So in conclusion, adapt, brain dump, connect. Those are three things that I've learned from remote working. If you adapt, obviously you'll be able to grow. If you brain dump, it means your head isn't buzzing. You can focus more on what you need to get done and when you need to get it done by. And if you're connected with people, someone is always going to have your back. Thank you so much for listening to me. And if you have any questions, I will happily take them.
Hey, Abby. First thing is I'm really, really happy to see you here. Your presentation was fantastic. Like the quotes, the design, like you did a brilliant job. I think that I always find ways to like tell that story again. So sorry if I repeat myself here, but I remember when COVID was just starting, I had just moved to London. I went to like 2 LGC events and something like that. And then one day I was complaining to Barry because like I'm more on the pessimistic kind of cynic side of things, you know, in general. And I was complaining, okay, I just moved to London. It was all about like making connections, growing my career, learn how to speak and things like that. And Barry he adopts like this kind of like mindset of solving problems, and there is an optimistic side of things. Now we can do things over Zoom, and that's a great opportunity to bring in speakers. And then he spoke to Dawn, and then this group that we're all here started because of that. Is there any, I think that part of this adaptability is about, you know, having optimistic problem solving mindset. Do you have any hints to like tune into that mindset, you know?
It's interesting you ask about that, actually. I think the biggest thing for me is something I saw on Instagram, actually, that someone had put, they look for the glimmers. And what that means is you look for the smallest bit of positivity in whatever's happening in your day. So whether it's just like today for where I am, the sun's shining, and that means that actually it's really pleasant to go out in the garden because I'm not going to get rained on. So that's a glimmer. And the more you start to notice the glimmers and keep noticing the glimmers, the more positive your mindset can become, because you obviously you're looking for the positives throughout your day. Even if they're just small things, you start to notice them more because you're choosing to look for them. I'd say that's what I would say. Alex, you've got your hand up. I'm always a bit nervous when you want to ask a question, but it's fine. It's normally not me at the receiving end.
They're normally quite nice. I was just going to say, so I mean, one of the big differences for me for working from home was the inability to just go around to somebody's desk and have a quick chat and be introduced to people by a mutual colleague and stuff like that. Do you have anything to suggest regarding that improving communication?
I think there are so many tools out there, aren't there? Like I know we've looked into some as well within RecWorks, just that for things to help improve engagement. And I think a lot of that, if you are completely remote and you're not based near any of your colleagues, it's just so important to keep those channels of communication open, I think, isn't it? So I would say, yeah, find a platform that works, obviously, for being able to just have those little side chats. Whether that's, I mean, we use Slack a lot, so whether it's through Slack and you get an add-on to it, or you know, there's a lot of other different programs, aren't there? Some you will probably all know a lot more about what's out there than I do, actually. But there are lots of employee engagement tools and things like that, aren't there? Ways that you can celebrate each other, and I think, yeah, again, it's about spreading that positivity, because although you're, like you say, you can't just go around to their desk and have a chat, there's nothing to stop you typing a message and putting some fun emojis in there, or a GIF that makes them laugh, or things like that, so you still have that engagement, or even doing a little video chat, you know, if you've got the time to be able to do that. So yeah, I think there's lots of ways you can, but I think just it's almost being purposeful and intentional about it, isn't it? I think is the main thing I would say.
That's very interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions before you let me off the hook? I'm going to take that as a no. So with no further ado, we're handing over to Carly. Go for it, Carly.
We must have been in sync because I've got a really similar topic. Okay, cool. Can everyone see slides? Cool. I can see. That's great. Okay. And I'm going to see everybody else as well. Okay, cool. Right. So I know a few people here, but anyone who doesn't know me, I'm Carly. I'm a developer advocate at Elastic. Before that, I used to be a software engineer at a bank. And today I'm here to talk about the social battery. I'm going to talk about why it relates to software engineering, some of my memories of, the impact it potentially had. And I'm also going to help you try and figure out when yours is perhaps drained or when it's full and you should take full advantage of Abby's advice to go off and connect with people. So what is it? Well, we keep talking about it as basically an allowance of energy that you have for socializing before you feel pretty burnt out and that you just want to go and hide off in the corner and do your own thing. We always talk about this stereotypical software engineer and this idea that it's a very introverted individual that sits in a corner and just wants to code all day and be left alone. But the reality is it doesn't work like that. It's a scale. It's impacted by lots of things such as your working circumstances, like Abby talked about with remote working. It can be impacted by mental health. It can be impacted by all sorts of different personal circumstances. And what's more important is trying to figure out where your battery is at the current point in time and then take appropriate actions to figure out how to take advantage of it. Now, what are the effects of a depleted battery? Well, first we need to understand what the battery is and how it impacts our overall energy. So there's a prominent psychologist called Dr. Roy Baumeister. And one of the pieces of research he did was on willpower. And what I found interesting when I started digging into it is what he's saying is when you enforce willpower to do something that you don't want to do, you actually deplete your energy faster. So to extend this to a social situation, if you are pushing yourself to be social and actually you just like to take a step back, you're going to further deplete yourself and end up potentially having some form of mental exhaustion. So what are the symptoms of this so we can all look out for it? Well, I'm talking about things like struggling to process new information, which obviously as a software engineer is very important. Being striving to kind of want periods of inactivity in conversations. So where you're normally the super chatty person, as I normally am as the extrovert with introverted tendencies, maybe taking a step back from that. Being irritated by things like light music or loud noises is another one. Difficulty responding to the cues and emotions that other people are projecting out. Physical manifestations such as headaches or back pain can also be an indication. And insomnia is another one as well. So if you're struggling to sleep regularly, it could be that maybe you're starting to burn yourself out a bit and maybe your levels of social interaction or your workload are part of it. So how does this relate to being a software engineer rather than just being a general human being? Well, one thing that I've been thinking about a lot is the idea of working under agile methodologies and where the ceremonies lie. So quick show of hands, how many people structure their work in their teams under some form of agile methodology, Scrum, Kanban, whatever? Okay, keep your hand up in the air if you find that the majority of your larger ceremonies happen towards the end of a sprint or a cycle. We're having shaking heads. So that's interesting because that's not what I found as an engineer. And actually, it's not what my husband's team are doing either. What I found was actually that we were quite bad for structuring the larger ceremonies, such as planning and reviews towards the end of the cycle to try and fit with the cadence. And then if for some reason you started moving them around, maybe due to holidays or people not being in, you'd have this horrible situation where people had times where they were constantly on a phone call or constantly, sitting in meeting rooms, things like that. And that's a very draining thing if you're sitting hours within your team trying to kind of focus on this particular activity. So it sounds like some of you are doing this instead. So what I'd recommend is trying to space them out as evenly as you can. trying to use the minimum amount of time you need. So try and not extend. If you're regularly extending, that's normally an indication of things such as perhaps your story sizing isn't right, perhaps we've not had enough discussion, perhaps there's issues with maybe this feature is actually needed or not. So I'd have a look at that. But then also, as Abby talked about with kind of communication, things like Slack and stuff, make sure you have those channels so that people can actually go offline and chat afterwards. Because maybe, you know, they think of something afterwards, or maybe, you know, they end up regaining some energy and they want to go and connect. So make sure we have that balance so that people can connect when they want to, and also, you know, have some downtime when they need to. But the other thing that we have, which is very unique and amazing, is that we have communities such as Aspiring Speakers, where we're on just now, and such as the London Java community, or the Elastic one, which I run in London as well. And there's some tools that you might not realize are there, or wonder why they're not actually called out, that are actually put in to try and help with people who are perhaps having a depleted social battery that want to come along to these sessions, which can be really buzzy, really exciting, but also are very socially involved. So how many people have seen the red, amber, green stickers maybe at a conference, right? How many of you have changed your sticker halfway through? Yeah, I'm having people going, no, not really. So for anyone who doesn't know, these stickers quite often are put on badges when you attend to major conferences. And it's a red, amber, green that's meant to say, you know, the level of social kind of engagement, where your battery is. We did use them for a brief period around proximity during kind of post-COVID, but we're now back to very much being on the social battery spectrum. But one of the things I don't see a lot of people doing is they don't change their stickers. And organisers as well need to make sure that people can change their stickers, because I've been guilty of it as well. You're super excited to turn up to the first day of that conference. You want to chat to everybody. It's amazing. And then by maybe the end of day 2 or day 3, your energy's starting to dip and you just like to kind of go off and hide for 20 minutes, or maybe start to kind of gauge back your conversations a bit. So be okay with changing these stickers. It's okay to change your mind. The second thing is the Pac-Man rule. So how many people have heard of the Pac-Man rule? And this is why we're talking about it today. So the first time I heard about this was at a conference called Half Stack London. And it's intended to try and help with communities for people who are maybe not familiar. So the idea is, rather than the traditional where you have an enclosed circle when you're having a conversation with people, leave a gap, like a Pac-Man shape, because that allows people who are new to the community, who don't know everyone, to feel invited into conversations, to come in and say hi. But it also means that it gives people an escape mechanism if they want to actually go off and do something else without it feeling like they have to hang around. So if we make sure that we mention these at the start of events and say use the Pac-Man rule, then obviously it means that people are free to kind of hop in and out. But the last thing is, know when you need to take some space time versus when you need to connect. So sometimes, as I know, with doing loads of conferences, being at booth duty all day, and then coming home to having my 4-year-old, as Abby was with her toddler, running around asking all of the questions under the sun, it's taking a lot. And you need to be mindful that sometimes you need to take a bit of space. So if that's in the venue itself, going off to a quiet corner to listen to some podcast or music to kind of chill out a bit, or if it's skipping a social because you're just not in that mind frame that day, that's absolutely okay. Because ultimately, as Jerry once said, we need to look after ourselves and each other. So being part of a community is wonderful. We should all look after each other and make sure that everyone is engaging in social interactions when they're comfortable. So we've talked about what social battery is, how it relates to being a software engineer, including within the community aspect as well. Questions, feedback, comments, all welcome. So thank you for listening.
Thanks, Carly. Well done. I do love how our talks linked. That was brilliant. We didn't plan that at all.
No, we must be in sync, Abby. That's what it is.
Absolutely. It's got to be it. Does anyone have any questions for Carly?
I'll do one. So I'm the fallback for all questions always. I think that, like, first thing, I really like the idea of like someone should have something, like there is this Brazilian barbecue places where instead of a sticker, you basically have a two-sided coin that you switch.
Yeah.
So maybe we should have stickers with like 3 colors so that someone doesn't have to go somewhere to change the sticker. That's patent pending like idea, right? But one thing that you told me that kind of resonate is like you have family, you have like commuting, and a lot of the draining, like feeling drained, like happens because you just want to stick a little bit more in an event, and then you're feeling very tired the next day because you gave it all. So how do you police yourself and enforce that I'm okay now, but I know that I will be tired? I need to like basically break down things, you know?
So I have a couple. So one of the things that I have is periods of like conferences all clustered together. And then I have periods of absolutely nothing. So the thing that I have to be wary of is I can go between extremes. I can have periods where I feel very isolated, and then I can have periods where it's just constant. And I tend to find that managing that means that I have to look out for those side effects. So the ones that I talked about. So I know for a fact if I'm struggling to kind of take in information, so if my husband has said the same thing about 12 times to me and I've still not retained it, that's probably an indication that we're getting too tired. But also I generally will feel tired if it's getting too much. So what I tend to do is just be wary of my tiredness. I also try and make sure that I know where the corners of the space are, that maybe I can go out and kind of, you know, if I need to, just go out and kind of chill out. But also sometimes I'll look for someone that I know, and then that means it's because it's a familiar relationship, it means it's a bit more kind of chilled and you don't need to think about it too much. So that would kind of be the main tips that I look for. And then I'm trying to think if there's anything else. The other thing I have actually is that my husband and I are trying on and off, keep trying to do like our own kind of, not like, it's not a space time night, but it's like our own nights where we can do something that's just for us. So like a good example would be Wednesday nights. If I'm taking the Wednesday night, I will like have a bath and then he'll look after the little one, and that means that I've still got that decompression time. And then I'll try and replicate something for him so that he can play Civilization 6 or whatever it is he wants to do. And I think having those points at family as well is probably another good thing to look out for. So if you need to take the personal time, find out what's the thing that's going to revitalize and energize you. Is it a bath? Is it a book? Is it whatever? And then make sure you fit those in when it's getting too much.
I'm just going to move because my washing machine is very noisy.
Are there any more questions for Carly? Not, I'm going to like introduce Karsten for the first time in the Aspiring Speakers group.
Hi, my name is Karsten. I'm a Java developer, and I actually do have a pretty hard topic here, a Java topic. So it's not a soft topic. It's it's a Java topic. So are there any Java developers here? Yes. Okay. Well, for the Java developers, I hope you find something interesting. For the non-Java developers, I'm afraid this is just probably going to go over your head. So think about something nicer, like refilling your social battery, for instance. So I'm about to, I need to share my screen now. And yeah, there we go. On my presentation, that's two. So you should be seeing the hello sign now. Do you see that? Wonderful. Okay, so now I'm going to Keynote, and I'm going to play it into the mode here. So I hope you see that. So you should see my title slide. Can you just tell me, because I can't see you guys anymore just here.
Yeah, we can
see
see
that?
it.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, so now type 9 minutes and we're ready to go. So my talk about why Java is so expensive to run and how you can make it cheaper. The summary is Java is expensive because it uses more RAM and CPU than, for instance, JavaScript or Go. Why do you care as a Java developer? Because you have competition from JavaScript and Python. And how can you make it cheaper? Well, you can make it cheaper with class sharing, something called Grec and Gradient. Okay, if you want to have the slides and more, you can go to this URL. I'll take a snapshot of this QR code. I'm going to show this again at the end. I'm going to paste it into the chat as well after the talk. So I'm going to get started. So the agenda, very obvious. Number one, why is Java expensive? What about this competition? And how can we make it any cheaper? So let's talk about why it is expensive. I already told you, uses more RAM and CPU, but why does it do that? And in order to answer this question, we need to take a look under the hood of Java. So this is pretty technical for all of you guys who don't know Java. Just think of something nice, not Java. Okay, so at build time, the Java compiler takes our source code and converts it into bytecode. At runtime, the JVM then takes that bytecode, creates a list of all the classes, initializes the JDK in the framework, initializes your app. And then the just-in-time compiler watches your app for a while, and in the end produces fast machine code. So that's what happens under the hood. Now, why does that actually use more CPU time? Well, you can see here, we've got these 3 steps. They run each time that your Java program runs, and you always get the same result, many Java objects. And as you can see to the right, there is the JIT compiler that takes your code and turns it into machine code that does a lot of stuff as well that takes CPU time. It's profiling and it's compilation. So that takes CPU time as well. Why does a Java program need more RAM than, say, a JavaScript program? Because we have an entire profiler and compiler that's part of our app and that runs in our app, and that takes memory. Now, this setup works for long-running apps that need a lot of memory, and there's a word for that in Java world. Actually, there's 2 words for that: app servers. So app servers are the ideal scenario for these kind of programs, long-running programs that need lots of memory. Okay, now you know why Java uses more RAM and CPU. So that's why it's expensive. Now, what about the competition? Okay, I already told you JavaScript and Python are competition for us Java developers, and that's not good. Not good for us, good for the JavaScript guys. Why is that? Well, as I told you, there's these Java app servers, but they're not on vogue anymore. Why? Well, in the past, we had the app server and our Java monolith ran there. Now, our Java applications run as microservice inside a container alongside other languages. So C#, Python, JavaScript, Go, they can all run in the container alongside our precious Java code. So we go from Java monolith, just our Java code as a monolith, to being just one of many microservices inside containers. Kubernetes doesn't really care what's inside the container. So that's why we have this competition here. So JavaScript and Python are competition for enterprise Java. Now you may say Java is faster, and that is true, but that often does not matter. And I want to give you 2 reasons for that. The first one is even a slow JavaScript app is better than no Java app. So in the past, there were often not enough Java developers. So instead of not writing a service, you can now take the front-end guy and say, hey, you guys, you now write back-end code. And so that's better, even if it's a bit slower, than having no application at all. And the second thing is, if you think about what do our applications typically do, if they spend 90% of their time waiting for a database or other APIs, that means at best our Java app can only be 10% faster. Java can't wait any faster than JavaScript or Python. It's just in the remaining 10%, the actual logic, where it could make a difference. But even if it makes all the difference in the world, it's just 10% faster. And so that's why it doesn't really matter that Java is faster to a certain degree. Okay, now you know about the competition that Java has. Now, how can we actually make Java cheaper so that we are more competitive? I already told you that as well. There's class sharing, there's Grec, and there's Gradient. So to understand the first 2, we need to take a look at that picture again. That's the under the hood picture. And we said there's stuff that runs each time, these 3 steps with the same results of many Java objects. And so how can we actually make that faster? Well, as often in software development, you cache stuff. So we cache the Java objects, meaning that we store them after they were created on the first run, and then we load them on the next runs. Okay, and we can apply that twice here. The first one is something called class data sharing, which saves CPU time. And here we cache the class list. It's this little fella down here. Okay, and so if we store it after first use and then load it later on, it saves us about 10% of the startup time. It depends on the application. How can we get that done? It's very simple. It's just a bunch of JRE parameters with Java 17, and you can find that on my talk page, the one with the QR code. There I can show you. It's like 3 steps that you need to do. Okay. Second one is called crack, and crack saves CPU time. Crack in this context does not reference a drug, does not refer to that drug. Instead, it refers to something called coordinated restore at checkpoint. And here we cache as well, but this time we cache the full application snapshot. So everything here, the class list, the stuff that happens here as the result of initialization, down to the machine code. So everything that the JIT compiler produced, the machine code, all of that is part of the snapshot. And as you can imagine, that can save a lot of startup. Here's some benchmarks that the guys did. Last year, they took a Quarkus application. Quarkus is a Java framework, and the startup time went from 1 second to 46 milliseconds. Then they did the same thing with a Spring Boot application, which went from 3.9 seconds to 38 milliseconds. So, very impressive. Now, at the beginning, I showed you this slide, and you notice these 2 numbers next to crack. These are actually footnotes. So here are the 2 footnotes and what they mean. So footnote number 1 is you need to have a JDK that supports crack. Currently, there's exactly one, which is the Azure JDK. It's free to download, free to use, even in production, but still, you have to use that JDK. The second footnote is you have to use a framework, and you can either use Spring Boot 3.1. This is the upcoming version coming out at the end of November this year, or Quarkus or Micronaut. Okay, now option number 3, GraalVM native image to be precise, and that's the only one in our list that saves both time and RAM. Okay, go back to the picture. Now this time we don't cache objects. Take a look at that picture. How could we make that go any faster? Well, if you look closely, you notice a certain imbalance, and the big idea is we move work to build time. So let's do it. So we take the JIT compiler and we move it to build time, which means the JIT compiler now is an AOT compiler, which stands for ahead of time compiler, like a C++ compiler. Now that means that we have machine code at runtime instead of bytecode. And that means we don't have a profiler step anymore. But now we realize the class list, we need that at build time as well. And we also want to move as much of that init work to build time. But we cannot move all of it to build time, just most of it. There's stuff that can only happen at build time, like when you react to your environment or you process runtime parameters. Okay, so the AOT compiler is called GraalVM native image, and we still have a JVM. It's called Substrate VM. That's what happens when you use GraalVM native image, which actually produces native executables. So instead of a java-jar, what we usually have, we actually have executables on Linux and Mac. They look the same. And on Windows, we have an exe. Okay, so I already told you, you save memory and CPU time with GraalVM. So here, going from Spring Boot 2 to Quarkus, startup time went from 640 milliseconds just to 10. And the memory went from 98 megabytes to 7.3. So that's quite. So if you feel pretty chuffed with yourself, then take a look at what happens with Go. With Go, you would be down to 2.6 milliseconds and 2.8 megabytes. So Java still has ways to go, unintended. Okay, and here GraalVM 345, also 3 footnotes. What do these footnotes mean? Footnote number 1 is not all Java stuff works with GraalVM native image. For instance, you cannot load arbitrary code or arbitrary files at runtime. You also need a framework that supports it. Here it's Spring Boot 3.0, the one that came out last November, or Quarkus or Micronaut. And build and troubleshooting is more expensive. So class sharing, crack, GraalVM are the ways to make Java cheaper. So summary again, Java's expensive because it uses more RAM and CPU. you can't because JavaScript and Python are competition for you if you're a Java developer, and you can make it cheaper with class sharing, Crack and GraalVM. Here are the slides again and the link. So do you guys have any questions about this very technical topic?
First of all, Karsten, that was amazing. I love the pacing of your presentation. The way that you popped like tests was really nice. One sneak peek, and it might be me because I have a bright monitor, but the blue background kind of pops up quite a bit. So you might want to just change the background color. On the technical questions, I think that as much as Azul and GraalVM and everything is great, there is something that frustrates me in the hand of like on JDK 9, we already had like a ahead of time compiler. It went nowhere. They remove it. Crack has been going for a while. Then they speak about Project Leiden, and it was supposed to be on JDK 21. Now they delay to the next one, which means the normal people will only get like an ahead of time compiler maybe on the LTS like JDK 29, which is like 2027 already. So in your opinion, like why is it so hard to like standardize some of those tools and have them like with the JDK for normal people to use, you know?
Okay, so the question was, there's a number of different ways, and why is it that we've got all these different bits and pieces, but no solidified strategy? So number one, just one little correction, if I may, there is an AOT compiler, which is GraalVM. GraalVM native image tool that I showed is part of the OpenJDK process, and starting with Java 21, which is coming out in a few days, there'll be a simultaneous release together. So from the OpenJDK perspective, that's the ahead of time compiler.
They delay it. I heard somewhere that they delay it and it's no longer JDK 21, but that's don't worry.
Okay.
As well.
Yeah. So they just recently had a release. So why are there these many different approaches? I think the main reason is when you look at it is that there were two different organizations. There's an Oracle, which is the guys that make Java. There is the OpenJDK group, which is Oracle plus a bunch of other guys, and the GraalVM native image that actually is from Oracle Labs. That were two different organizations, and with two different, and so they kind of, they work with different impediments, and the Oracle guys, the OpenJDK, were just moving slowly and carefully, trying to preserve compatibility, whereas the Oracle Labs, if you're an Oracle Labs project, it's not guaranteed that you survive. So you run fast and break things, because unless you show success, you get shut down. And so the GraalVM guys, they ran fast, they broke things, but they achieved some good results. And it's just this clash of culture and politics of being slow and steady and running fast, of breaking things, that that these things kind of happened alongside. But now they're under one roof, so there will be GraalVM releases coming out. There was just one coming out in August. I did a piece on that for InfoQ, and there was supposed to be one coming out in September. Now, the Project Leiden is a totally different thing. So Project Leiden tried to kind of do something similar as GraalVM, but within the OpenJDK, and that got delayed for political reasons, supposedly. And that's a separate story. But you can use GraalVM as part of OpenJDK Java. And for instance, if you buy the Oracle license, Oracle Java license from Oracle, that now includes not just the Java, but also GraalVM. So they sell you both of them together. So from Oracle's perspective, these two things belong together.
Did that answer your question, Anthony?
No, it does, totally. Is there any other further questions for Karsten over here? For the other three Java developers that raised their hands, maybe?
Hi. Actually, I don't have a question, but I want to say thank you very much for sharing your experience and the useful information. And I'm so happy to be here. Thank you very much for everyone.
It's great to have you here. So if there is no further questions for Karsten, I just want to say something. I pinged the links for both. I see some new people here. I don't know how many of them are from the Aspiring Women Speakers group, which is our sibling, but I pinged the link where you can join the Slack channel, and we have meetups like this every month or maybe 2 weeks. It depends a little bit. Carly is already organizing the next one. So if you want to join your Slack channel, if you want to chat and eventually give a talk, please do join us. And I also pinned the link for several other RecWorks communities, like really nice places like Meet a Mentor that help quite a bit, aspiring fractionals, aspiring CTO. So yeah, that's what I have to say. And I hope everyone has a great day.
Sorry, Anthony, where are those links?
On the chat.
I can only see Karsten's. Did you? Can anybody else see them?
I'll
just me.
ping it again.
Right at the top.
Here you go.
Thanks very much.
Okay. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Bye.